Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we mark today, day 613 since the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates launched their onslaught on the communities of southern Israel on October 7th of 2023, committing crimes that, of course, have impacted much of the discourse to date. It is important to highlight that also today we will discuss thoroughly the situation vis-a-vis the Gaza Strip, the latest with regard to the Iranian portfolio, and last but not least, also the attack on the three ports in Yemen. Before we do so, let's introduce our guest for today from Central Israel. We're joined by our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren, and here with me in the studio is Brigadier General in Reserve Doron Gavish, who is the commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Air and Missile Defense. And General Gavish, I'd like to start with you since over the course of the past 24 hours, the Houthis launched a projectile, some type of ballistic missile in the direction of Israel. They claim that the Saudis managed to intercept it. Of course, it fell down along the way. If I'm not mistaken, roughly 14% of all the ballistic missiles they launch fail from the get-go. But nonetheless, in that context, what can you tell us about that? And, of course, the response by Israel launching an attack against three separate ports, once again in Houthi territory within Yemen.
Well, first of all, you're right, Jonathan. There is a quite significant percentage of those projectiles that or they didn't shoot them, or they tried to shoot them and they stayed on their launchers, or it fell short, or it fell someplace around Saudi. And this is also something that we've seen the last 48 hours. I think that going back to the significant answer this time from the Israeli side, it is unique because this is the first time that Israel used its navy to strike those ports in Yemen, which is an important asset for the Houthis. There is a significant that it was made by the navy, because whatever is happening with the Houthis, but also project what could be happening with Iran and other capabilities of Israel, and being able to put Israeli assets, navy assets on this region. This is an important signal to the Houthis, but not only to the Houthis. Of course, the strike was quite precise. From Israel, we have to remember that we have to keep this balance between how we're dealing now with the Houthis, which are continuously shooting toward Israel projectiles. We are quite successful on the defense, which is very important. Otherwise, we probably have to do more. But we have to remember that this is not the main challenge today of Israel. The main challenge is Iran, and of course, what is happening in the Gaza Strip. And we still have to remember that we have the West Bank and Syria and Lebanon and Iraq and so on. So within this balance, we are dealing with the Houthis. And as I said, the uniqueness of this strike is really making it by the Israeli Navy. And by the way, the Navy was pushing quite for a long time. They wanted to be a part of this fight. They thought that they could do well, and they did. So the basket of opportunities for Israel is enlarging.
In contrast to many people who very often say that the troops are not interested in going into combat and so on and so forth, that is not true.
No.
The troops, both here in Israel, in the United States, in Europe, and elsewhere, they are eager to go into combat environments. Of course, there are different levels of eagerness between one unit to another, but nonetheless, that is something that usually those who do not intend or serve are the ones who push back against the utilization of strong power in various
and
theaters.
may I add, Jonathan, this eagerness is not to fight just because we want to fight or we want to
Naturally,
be
no.
part of the war. This eagerness is because we also want to take a part in defending Israel.
Absolutely.
We want to take part on this very justice war.
Absolutely, yeah. Mr. Oren, I'd like to hear your 2 cents on the latest with regard to Yemen, please.
So first of all, let's focus on what is happening in naval warfare. For centuries, of course, the whole idea of navies was to fight other navies, the navies of the other side of empires, armadas, and all of that, by corvettes, frigates, destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and eventually aircraft carriers, in addition to submarines. But in recent decades, the emphasis has shifted to what the US Navy called a few years ago from the sea. The naval vessels, because they are not going to clash with their type, their kind, they are being used as platforms to strike at targets on the shore. And therefore, what has been perfected has been the class of surface-to-surface missiles, but those being launched from missile boats of various sizes. Now, what happened overnight or early this morning is the first confirmed strike by any Israeli missiles which are not air to ground. This is quite a precedent. Now, we are talking about the Navy, but the interesting fact is that Israel has shown that even when its Air Force is not being operated, or even if it is being out of commission for some reason, it still has in its arsenal tools which can hit the enemy. And as you and Doron said, the fact that the Navy, as well as the Air Force, can hit Iran and other countries from 360 degrees. Iran, of course, has many naval fronts, the Mediterranean, the Gulf of Aden, the Straits of Hormuz, the Persian Gulf, the Indian Ocean, an Israeli Navy vessel, such as a missile boat, can strike at it from hundreds of kilometers away. And this is quite a signal to everyone. However, before we gloat too much, this particular strike will not solve the Houthi problem. The Houthis have been launching these missiles and drones at Israel to little effect, but they are laying siege to the port of Eilat through the blockade of Bab el-Mandeb. And this is what Israel should solve, either from the air, from the sea, or by some other sort of operation on the ground.
Indeed. Well, we are seeing a growing focus on the Yemeni file. Nevertheless, we do also need to take into account the tensions with the Iranians with regard to their nuclear file are escalating. We will touch on that very briefly. Before that, I'd like to ask you, General Kavish, is there a certain calculus with regard to the decision to utilize the Israeli Navy into the fact that U.S. Central Command Commander Michael Kurilla, who left his post just recently, his deputy took over, Rear Admiral, or Vice Admiral rather, Bradford Cooper, who formerly also served as the commander of NAVCENT, namely the naval component of Central Command. Is there a certain calculus in there in order to further increase the interoperability with Central Command in this context?
No, I wouldn't tie between those. By the way, Kurilla is still in his post office. You're right that his deputy would be next in command. I think this is a pure interest, as we mentioned before, of the Israeli Navy and the Israeli IDF to widen the basket of opportunities that we have. You could use the Air Force now. You could use also the Navy. We have to remember that there are some other assets within the Israeli Navy that were not used yet, and they could be used if Israel would decide. And so yes, in the answer to your question is yes, in the sense that once the Navy is there, same as it happens on the air, we have to be fully cooperated, fully correlated, and there is a fully communication between Israel assets, US assets, and what is being done in this area in general between CENTCOM and Israel. But for sure, now that the Israeli Navy was part of the strike, we have to remember that there are quite a lot of US assets which are in this region, and you must be correlated with them. By the way, not only US assets, there are some other countries which are also in this region. So through CENTCOM, you must be correlated with each one of them.
Absolutely. Of course, based on public knowledge, we know the French are here, the Brits, and others, but we won't go into the whole list of those. Mr. Oren, last night there was a very interesting phone conversation, which, according to separate reports, lasted for roughly 40 minutes, after which President Donald Trump came out and stated that the response to U.S. Special Envoy Witkoff's proposal on a outline for a nuclear deal is not acceptable. The Iranians continue to demand enrichment of purity levels of up to 3.67%. Well, the United States says, no, you're not going to get a full an entire fuel cycle, and we're going to determine or remain adamant on zero enrichment.
Well, as you know, and as Donald Trump knows even better than all of us, in negotiations, there is what you call a buffer, best and final offer. And the public discourse, the public announcements, either by Supreme Leader Khamenei, Foreign Minister Arakchi, or other Iranian spokespeople, or Trump and his subordinates, this is only part of the negotiations. We don't know what is happening within the rooms, what the Omanis are bringing with them when they run between rooms in proximity talks. And perhaps there is even another track between CIA Director Ratcliffe, who happened to be in Israel a couple of months ago and who probably also goes on other secret missions, and his Iranian counterparts. So yes, if we are to judge only by public pronouncements, there is no way to bridge over the gaps between the Iranians and the Americans. But because you mentioned the Trump press conference, there was a very interesting remark that he made. When he was asked about Gaza, he said that there's massive negotiations going on in which Iran is also involved. Now, Steve Witkoff is indeed the envoy handling both of these negotiations, but does that mean that Iran has been asked to use its good offices to put pressure on Hamas to release the hostages? And if so, what does she expect in return?
Well, that is a question mark that, of course, we need to take into account. The fact that Iran has its own proxies in the Gaza Strip, to include Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which operates in all Palestinian camps, to include also Syria, Lebanon, and elsewhere. But nonetheless, we will stick now to the nuclear file. We will revert to this topic momentarily. General Gavish, Iran is seemingly playing chicken with the United States. It's like a huge tank driving full force, namely the United States, into a small beetle, driving in the same pathway. Within what context of what Mr. Owen mentioned, why should the United States be the one to first turn the wheel?
Well, first of all, from when we are looking at it from the United States point of view, we do have to remember that on nuclear Iran, this is not only a Israeli issue. This is really an issue of all the Mediterranean. And President Trump was here months ago or something like this. All those deals that he cut with Qatar and Oman and Saudi and so on, they wouldn't be really shifting to the part of having them if the Mediterranean would not be peaceful. You cannot do it while there is a war around you. So there is a huge interest from the United States to make sure that this deal would be cut and that the Iranian won't have a nuclear weapon. And there is a big question, of course, that is being asked: are the United States, are they willing to really take this stick that is over there and really to hit with it. And I think that if this would be the end result of the negotiation, from my point of view, this is a true option. It is not the United States, although it is not its interest. We have to say it's not the interest of United States that would be a war. But I think that United States and
Is there an interest for anyone that there will be a war?
well, some might say that,
except for Russia or China, maybe.
some
China also not
some might say that in Israel there are those that want anyway to strike the atomic plants and so on. But again, from the U.S. point of view, for sure, of course, it served the Israeli interest if at the end of the day there would be a deal that would be cut with the Iranians. But I'm going back to the stick. I think that it is very important to know and to highlight that, at least from my point of view, the United States, if would be needed, it is willing to use this stick. And I think that the Iranians must take it to their consideration. And the other thing that I think it is important to highlight is that I think also President Trump and the United States are very aware on what is the Iranian negotiation tactics. They've done it for years, and for their point of view, let's push it and let's continue negotiation, and 1 month and another month and another month. And I think that this is something that the United States is very, very aware of. We have to listen carefully to what the president was saying a month ago and what he's saying now. So I think that the time is running for the Iranians, and I hope that for them that they would make the right decision, because I think that it is very important that the United States is sticking to his demand that there would be no enrichment on the soil of Iran.
The letter that President Trump sent to the Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic, namely Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was sent on the 14th or 16th of the month, Mr. Owen.
Well, we haven't seen the letter, but you call Khamenei the Supreme Leader. Trump calls himself the Supreme Dealer. And building on what Doron Gavish just said, President Trump would rather focus on other topics such as homeland security. We see his investment in trying to secure the southern border, what is happening now in Los Angeles, his investment in Golden Dome. This all comes at the expense of other missions, activities, and forces. He is not attentive right now to foreign crisis. And the Iranians are clever enough not to make a strike against them inevitable. They don't put any deadline. There is no ultimatum. Life goes on. As Doron Gavish said, there is no hurry. They are not brash enough to test a weapon or to announce that they have crossed a threshold. They are essentially putting or kicking the ball into Trump's half of the court.
Right, they're being very tactical here. They seek to wait out and delay and procrastinate as much as possible until a point where they can conveniently rush it to nuclear proliferation. And that is something that cannot be accepted. Right now, the circumstances from a technical perspective is very alarming because they are reducing the 5%, they're reducing the 20% of enriched uranium, and they're converting that into 60%, which is quite a significant effort by the Iranian nuclear program right now as we speak. And however you don't look at it, I mean, there is a certain timeline.
Let me present the opposite case. If they are one day going to announce to the world, or the IAEA or other credible outside agency announces that the Iranians have crossed their Rubicon, it would be to their great disadvantage, because this would prove a very powerful case against them, while they will still be a year or so away from having nuclear weapons themselves. It will make it easier for their adversaries to strike at them while they do not have a credible nuclear force.
I disagree on one premise. I understand the school of thought and the logic behind it, but nonetheless, look at North Korea today. They are able to outmaneuver, take the Pakistani case study and the South African case study. You have so many case studies about member states of the United Nations which were signatories of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and outmaneuvered the international community and the scrutiny of the West. So to say that the Iranians, it's not in their best interest to go out of their way to achieve nuclear weapon capabilities at this point in time, even though I understand, once again, the logic behind it, the regime in Tehran is too fragile to afford something like that. And that is something that ultimately we need also to take into account. General Kavish,
on this point, allow me, Jonathan. I mean,
please.
Let's look at it from the Israeli point of view now, from the Israeli interest. Can we take a chance?
No.
There is no question that we can't be in this point, even that the Iranian would have the decision if they are doing it this way or the other way.
Right.
We can't take chance, and this is why we are in such a crucial time. This is why the discussion yesterday was dramatic between the two leaders of the country. And so,
moreover, I don't think the Americans can take a chance because now they're still in control of the NPT.
I agree.
The day after, I mean, who knows who is going to rush to nuclear weapon capabilities on the global stage, not only in the immediate vicinity from Turkey to Egypt to Saudi Arabia and others, but there were discussions already in Germany about a committee with regard to nuclear proliferation. There were discussions in South Korea and elsewhere. So this is something that the Americans need to approach, of course, from a geostrategic perspective within the context of strategic power competition. We don't have very much time left, and I still would like to touch on Gaza. There are negotiations ongoing. Nevertheless, what we see on the ground is an escalatory, or at least a certain escalation dominance in which Israel or the IDF is really ratcheting up its pressure on the local forces in Gaza. To what degree is this being successful, Mr. Owen?
Well, if you look at it from the bottom up, of course, there are achievements. You can count the number of tunnels destroyed, of enemy forces being annihilated, and so on and so forth. But if you look at it from the other side, from the top down, you don't know when the will and capability of Hamas and the other organizations will be broken. And the chief of the general staff, Eyal Zamir, has announced several weeks ago that he is planning this operation to last for some 60 days. Most, or at least one half of this time has elapsed. And while Hamas is on the ropes, it has not given up yet. So it is just not practical to try and say arbitrarily now whether we are close to the end.
General Gavish, we don't have very much time left, as you can see.
Yeah, I think that what is important to say that the IDF is really, fighting with this tension all the time. That we have to remember that from one hand, we are not rushing into this fight. It's a very complex area, a very dense one. We saw, unfortunately, what happened a few days ago. All the houses there are being booby-trapped, and so it's very complex, and you have to do it slowly and to take your time while you are doing it. From the other end, the hostages don't have so much time.
Right.
The situation is very bad, and we have to work in between those tensions. And we have to remember that the IDF said again and again and again that his main goal in this 60 days is to bring the Hamas to a point that they would go back to the negotiation table. So it's a very delicate time also, and very crucial time also in the Gaza Strip.
Mr. Owen, a few seconds left, but how many hostages are right now left in the Gaza Strip in Hamas captivity, since also the body of the Thai individual who was taken captive on October 7th was retrieved? Are we at 55, 56?
Indeed, 55. 20 of them are considered alive. Of course, if it turns out that there are more, everyone will be so much happier. And 35 are bodies of hostages who are either abducted, already dead, killed by their captors, or died in captivity in various horrible means. So 55 is the total number right now.
Heart-wrenching, truly. Well, thank you, Mr. Owen and General Gavish, for all of your insights. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well, just to highlight that we would like to encourage you to keep the hostages in prayer. Also, reach out to your representatives or your parliamentarians, whoever you can reach out to really tell them that there's still 55 hostages in Hamas captivity, and they can do more. The international community can do more. I'd like also to highlight that TV7 Israel is a donation-based ministry with all of our productions exclusively reliant on donations by our viewers. And therefore, if you're blessed by the programs that we are producing daily, I'd like to encourage you to donate. You can do so via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Thank you again, gentlemen. I'd like to thank you at home as well. From here in Jerusalem, Shalom.